FrankTalks.com.
Taking a relationship to the next level. This is Passion with Dr. Laurie.
Welcome to Passion, a show all about love, sex, and relationships. I'm Laurie Betito. I'm a clinical psychologist. I do have a specialty in sexuality, and we are heard here in Montreal and in Toronto, weeknights 10 to 11 p.m. Tonight on the program, we focus on your dating questions. We call this feature Dating Dilemmas, and in studio with me are two dating experts. One is a dating coach, Frank Kermit of FrankTalks.com. The other is Fritz-Gerald, who runs EliteSpeedDating.com, and he runs events in Montreal and in Toronto, so you can always go on there and sign up. If you have questions, certainly about what speed dating is all about, you can ask them here, or any other form of dating. If you have issues, questions, whether you are back in the dating scene or not, or just getting into the dating scene, whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you tonight. You can call us toll free at 1-800-491-2523. You can text us 514-800 from Montreal or 71010 from Toronto, and we would love to hear some of your thoughts. Now, I know, Frank, you did an unofficial kind of poll on Facebook, and you figured it's our first dating dilemmas, Montreal, Toronto, and lots of people have long-distance relationships between Montreal and Toronto.
Exactly. If you can't find someone in the city you're in, you're going to have to expand your horizons. Montreal and Toronto seem to be close enough that people are willing to try a long-distance relationship.
But the success of long-distance relationships, maybe we need to talk about how do people succeed in those dating relationships. I mean, long distance is not easy.
It's not easy, and what I decided to do is I posted this on my Facebook, and the question I asked is, if one person lives in Toronto and the other person lives in Montreal, is a long-distance relationship possible? Mm-hmm. What are the rules, and what would you expect from the other person? Would you expect them not to date anybody locally when you're not there?
I would think that if you're involved in a committed relationship, that goes without saying.
In some cases, other people will say, well, I can't exactly expect the other person to be monogamous if I'm only going to see them once every couple of weeks. So some people get a little bit flexible with those rules, depending on a person's needs and what their expectations are.
Right. Again, these are rules that you set out together, but these are conversations that need to be had.
Absolutely.
I would love to hear from people who have done the long distance thing and how it worked for them. And to me, there's a difference between meeting somebody long distance, in other words, meeting somebody online that lives far away and starting an online relationship, versus you meet and maybe you met in Montreal, one person goes to U of T and has to go off to university or a new job or something, and then the relationship becomes long distance. And I think those are two very different scenarios.
I would very much agree. I think that when people meet online and that is the limit to the context of the relationship, I would even venture to say that they don't have a relationship yet until they meet face to face and they see if what's going on online and the chemistry they have online actually transitions to face-to-face and being together in the real world.
I'm wondering from our listeners, have you ever been in a long-distance relationship, and what made it work? What were some of the challenges that you faced? To text us in Montreal, 514-800, or from Toronto, 71010. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. My panelists tonight, Frank Kermit and of FrankTalks.com. He is a dating coach and the author of more than 20 books on the subject of dating. And we also have Fritz-Gerald, who runs EliteSpeedDating.com, which is all about speed dating. And I wonder, well, some of our listeners may not know what speed dating is, but this texter writes, any thought into a night shift speed dating, which I thought, that's pretty cool. There are a lot of people who work night shifts, and maybe meeting somebody else who's on the same type of shift certainly can make a relationship work better, no?
I would agree. Yes. At least there's one common area of interest in both work and
it's
night.
not interest, it's time. It's like, when you've got two different shifts on how do you make the time to be together?
I can see a brunch speed dating event happening for people who work the night shift. So it's it's for people who work, let's say, later. They finish at 8 o'clock in the morning instead of 6 o'clock in the morning. Maybe a brunch speed dating
So there's
event.
something for you to think about, Fritz.
Will do. And
Okay.
I always welcome ideas. And if there's people who want to do it, of course we'll make it happen. Just something over lunch, and I love the brunch idea as well. We're definitely going to keep that in mind and work on it.
So the only thing people really have to do is sign up, and then you put up your profile, and when an event comes up or when you have enough people for an event, you let people know, etc. Is that how it works?
That's
generally?
precisely that.
All right. So whether you're from Toronto or whether you're from Montreal, Fritz does events in both cities, and you can sign up and wait for that. So Texter writes, me and my boyfriend live an hour away from each other. We both have always lived where we live, but met in person. It was always long distance, but it works. Now, living an hour away by car, if you're in Toronto, everything's an hour away in my books.
Yeah.
It's like everything's far. You're sitting in traffic, so that works. So if it's a plane ride away, that's more complicated.
Well, it's more expensive. Actually, somebody here wrote, Stephen writes, this is what Via Rail and Porter Airlines are for
Yes.
people who have long-distance relationships between Montreal and Toronto.
And you need kind of frequent flyer. Make sure you get your points so that you can accumulate and maybe get free flights so it doesn't cost you so much, or find ways to get plane deals and via deals. And I know some people were talking about, like, on certain days it's cheaper, and you just have to navigate that world and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. We got something else here. Louis writes, he's been doing this for almost 2 years with his girlfriend, and they both stopped dating other people. She is the one.
So, okay, in a situation like that, so they're one living in Montreal, one living in Toronto. She is the one. What's the plan? What next? What now? You can't live like that forever. Who moves where? What do you do?
Well, at that point, first, most people, I would assume, would be looking at their careers. Who has the more flexible career? Who can move city? You also have to look at other obligations. Is the person taking care of any parents? Does the person have ties to the community that they cannot abandon? So even if the relationship is going well, there's a lot of other factors to consider when trying to figure out if they're going to move or not.
Right.
I agree with you, Frank, but I also say, having lived a long distance relationship myself and knowing people.
Was it a Montreal-Toronto one?
It was a Montreal-Toronto,
Oh, was
and that
it? Okay.
actually moved to a Montreal-Nigeria at one point. So,
Okay, that's a lot further, Fritz. That's a hell of a lot further.
and knowing couples who've lived that as well, yes, the career becomes a factor, where your social circle is or your support system is. But at one point, eventually, and I'm very happy for that person that it works out, someone will move. And
Someone has to move.
it will be a decision that will have to be taken.
If the goal is to move in together or possibly have children together, then yes, someone has to move. But not everybody is looking to live with someone. If you're maybe later on in your years and you don't want to have kids and you actually like the companionship and you can afford the long distance traveling.
If you don't want somebody in the same city to have there whenever, I suppose, I find it hard. I think for most of us, that would not be an easy thing. Would love to hear our thoughts from our listeners. 514-800 if you're texting in from Montreal, or 71010 from NewsTalk Radio in Toronto. We would love to hear, have you ever been in a long distance relationship? Did it work for you? Or maybe it didn't, and why didn't it work? And especially the Montreal-Toronto relationships are the most, I find them so common. Mm-hmm. I know so many people who have done that, but I also know that people have moved. I have plenty of friends that moved to Toronto after a relationship, and Frank, you did it too.
I was in Toronto for 5 years. I really do miss Toronto.
Yes.
I really do miss Toronto.
This texter says, I have a great long-distance relationship. I left him a long time ago, and he's a great distance away.
That's not what we were talking about.
Not exactly what we're talking about, but hey, if you've been in a long-distance relationship, I mean, it's not, we can talk about any dating question tonight. It's just that we happen to do a little poll, unofficial poll about this. So if you want to weigh in on that, we would love to hear from you. But if you have any questions about dating, whether it's online dating, speed dating, whether it's how to do a successful profile, whatever it is, we'd love to hear from you right here on Dating Dilemmas on Passion in Montreal and in Toronto.
Stimulating radio. Passion with Dr. Laurie.
Passion, a show all about love, sex, and relationships. Tonight we talk about relationships, long-distance relationships, dating relationships. We focus on dating tonight. It is Dating Dilemmas, which means I have my panel of dating experts, Frank Kermit, who is a dating coach. He can be found at FrankTalks.com. And we have Fritz-Gerald of EliteSpeedDating.com as well. So if you have questions, any questions related to dating relationships, we'd love to hear from you tonight at 514-800 if you're texting in from Montreal, or if you're texting in from Toronto, 71010. You can also call us, toll-free number 1-800-491-2523. This texter writes, Belgium, Cameroon for 1 year. We talked every single day till I moved over to Belgium. Today we are married for 12 years. Of course, somebody has to move, and that's far. I mean, these are real distances that you can't just go and see each other every weekend. Whereas Montreal, Toronto, Montreal, New York, Toronto, New York, like some of these are easier to navigate and get to by car as well, except in the dead of winter when the roads are bad and then you're stuck. You've got to do something else. This texter writes, I had a long distance relation with a guy in Toronto. We met, this is from Montreal, we met every 4 weeks in person at alternate homes using the phone the rest of the time. This lasted for 10 months until Pope John Paul II died in 2005. I gather his religion was more important, quickly severing communication. I guess he had to ditch his closeted gay life. It took me almost a year to finally move on. So this was a gay relationship, obviously.
Wow.
And yeah, that's...
Sometimes people use the long-distance relationship in order to harbor a secret.
Well, or to hide from family or what have you, to live out your sexuality the way you want to in a different city or somewhere else. So it doesn't have to come out. That's right. Go ahead.
We got a question here. Somebody wrote to me, in long-distance relationship, how long before someone needs to move?
That's a really good question. How long does it last until you need to move? Now, I think personally, depends on the stage of life you're at. Right? If you're 20 and you're not looking to get married or you're not looking to have kids right away, that's a different scenario. But if you're in your 30s, and it depends on what you want. If you want a relationship here and build a family and what have you, you have to move in pretty quickly, I would think.
If you have a biological clock ticking, you may not have time to waste. And at the same time, you better make sure that you're choosing wisely. If there's no biological clock in place, take as much time as you need, because you don't want to make a move only to find out that you gave up almost everything, depending what you're giving up, for the wrong person.
Right. And also, I think it's you should never throw it in somebody's face. Look what I did for you. I moved over here for you. I gave up this for you.
Yeah, but it's going to happen.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's a choice that's made, and you take responsibility for those choices.
100%. If the person who chooses to move, they move for their own reasons, and they have to be okay with the fact that if it doesn't work out, that they have a quote-unquote backup plan. Because you do not move and put that in the person's face. I did this for you. You did this for yourself in order to promote or fulfill this relationship.
Right. Yeah, but with that said, a person needs to feel appreciation. If someone is going to uproot their entire life to move, and yes, they're getting something out of it, if they're not feeling appreciated for that move, then that lack of appreciation is an issue in the relationship, and sometimes people need to be reminded not to take one another for granted.
I actually disagree with that.
Go ahead, disagree.
Of course you people disagree.
I disagree very much that I should feel, or the person should feel, that they need to give you a certain form of validation in order, because you moved. You chose to move because you wanted to be in this relationship and thus make us work.
Right. It's an us. It's not an I did this for you.
Exactly.
It's a we made this decision together.
With that said, how many times have people said, I did so much for the other person and the other person didn't appreciate it? My concern is that someone makes that move and the other person just doesn't really factor in. Yeah, the person came all the way here for me, but I was never really 100% serious to begin with.
Well, I think that's a difference. Yeah, that would be, this is why you need to evaluate whether this is something that could work. In studio with me, Frank Kermit, Fritz-Gerald, both involved in the dating world, which I'm looking around here and I'm thinking, these are two guys who are dating coaches, dating, working in the dating field. I often associate dating with women. Like maybe that's just my bias, but it's interesting.
Well, the majority of dating coaches tend to be women.
Okay. And here I found two that are guys. Interesting.
And you get the other perspective.
I get the other perspective, yes. And I know that sometimes men have a lot of questions about dating. I know, Frank, you did a lot of work in Toronto with adult male virgins. I know that was a big thing for you there.
Yeah, I used to run support groups where a number of the men showing up were adult male virgins just trying to figure out how to get into dating.
Right.
I really, really miss Toronto. It was working with that setting, seeing guys flourish, getting their first girlfriends ever was a great time.
Well, the work you can do it anywhere. So that's part of it.
now
Whether you do it here or do it there.
I do it now on Skype.
I'm sure they still kind of miss you. All right, here's some text at 514-800 in Montreal. You can also text us from Toronto 71010. Who can cheat with little chance of getting caught? Who can do whatever whenever they want? Those in long distance relationships. Sounds more like friends with benefits.
And that's a very good point, because people can get away with things more when you're living long distance. That's one of the risks you take. In my survey, there's a guy who wrote here, Ted, I would never be monogamous with someone who lives in a different city. I need to have sex. So some people are not going to be comfortable.
No, they're not going to want that. And it has to fit for you. If it doesn't, if you're the kind of person that needs to have a partner close by and you need that reassurance or whatever, it's going to be very difficult. And it can bring up a whole bunch of insecurities and jealousies and all of that.
Right, because your imagination takes control and runs away with you.
Absolutely.
Colleen suggests to use sex toys for people who are in long-distance relationships.
Well, actually, the WeVibe, one of the top branded sex toys made by an Ontario couple, actually created by an Ontario couple, is a sex toy for couples that has an app that goes with it that the person, wherever they live, could actually control it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
So there you have it. It's something certainly made for that. Let's go to Dan on the line. Hi, Dan.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you, Dan?
Good. Well, I got married today.
Hey,
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So my husband is from the Middle East.
Okay.
We're in the process of going through the immigration process.
Okay.
We're in the process of going through the immigration process. Yeah. Anyway, so and his family can never find out about us.
Whoa.
Because if they do,
They'll
it
disown
will bring
him.
shame upon his family, and who knows what they might do to him.
Right. Oof.
And this puts me in a very awkward position. Now, first of all, let me tell you, I love him, so I'm willing to give him a pass on that, even though years and years and years and years ago I said that the person I married would have to be out of the closet. And obviously, to his family, he's not. To everybody else in the world, he is.
Right.
But,
so he lives far away from his family, I would imagine.
well, yeah, they live, on the other side of the. It's okay, I joke. I have in-laws that live 7,000 miles away and don't speak English.
Right. Well,
Or
maybe
French.
better that way for you at this point, but that's a difficult situation to be in. That's
Right, 'cause I
really
can't
tough.
even post, today, I can't even post pictures of our wedding on Facebook because there's always that small, even though my Facebook page is locked down, it's that small little chance that,
That somebody who knows him can steal the photo, copy it, send it around, and you don't want to put him at risk in any way.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it's not easy because, you know what, my family is very open, very accepting, typical Canadian. We talk, we blab, gossip. And he has a brother that lives in Mississauga, for example, and
he doesn't know. Does the brother doesn't know either?
Right. And so what happens with? It's really, we have a lot of things that are going to cause problems in the long run because, like, for example, what if his brother from Mississauga wants to drive up to the 401, to see us in Montreal?
You're going to have to pretend you're roommates, have a separate room. You're going to have to do a lot of pretending, I guess.
Right. At what point do you draw a line in the sand and say no?
Well, you chose to marry him, and you knew what you were getting into, and you're going to have to be super compassionate and super patient because you can't force him to go anywhere he's not ready to go. So you're just going to have to live with it the way it is.
True, but this was also a decision that he made, that he wanted to do this, and he pursued me, and he...
Yes, but he also told you that he wasn't going to come out of the closet to his family.
True.
Right.
That's true.
Okay, so let's take that responsibility. Okay?
All right.
All right, Dan. Good luck, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Let your
Take care.
love
Bye-bye.
flourish. All right, take care. That's a tough situation to be
It's a
in.
really tough situation, but
Yeah.
it has to be mindful that we're dealing with some safety issues, maybe
That's
life
right.
and death issues. So
Yeah.
it's not something that we want to take chances with.
Exactly. Tonight it is dating dilemmas. We've actually been focusing on long distance relationships and would love to hear some of your thoughts, your stories. Have you been in a long distance relationship? We'll also take any question you have about dating, period. 514-800 to text in Montreal or from Toronto 71010. You can also call our toll-free number at 1-800-491-2523. You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito on CJAD 800 in Montreal and NewsTalk 1010 in Toronto.
Whether you need to learn how to talk or something more hands-on, she can help. Passion with Dr. Laurie.
This is Passion, a show all about love, sex, and relationships. We are heard Monday to Friday, 10 to 11 p.m. in Montreal and in Toronto. And tonight, Dating Dilemmas. It's a monthly feature. We focus just on dating. We've been talking about long-distance relationships and getting your feedback on this. From Montreal, I'm in a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend. We are continents apart. She lives in Iran and I'm visiting her next week. Yay. She's the love of my life and I'm taking this to the next level and want to bring her here to Canada. Wish me luck. We do wish you luck, Saeed. So good luck to you.
Fingers crossed.
Right. So that's another situation, right? Where you go, you meet a wife or somebody that you want to bring back with you. That's also pretty common.
Yeah, and there's a lot of challenges too. As legitimate as any relationship is going to be, there is an immigration process that will challenge the validity of your relationship, where you may have to prove that you have a relationship,
Right.
And it isn't just as a means to
get married,
to get or for somebody to get citizenship,
right?
And get the paperwork done.
Right. From Toronto, we have: can two people who are completely opposite be together? Good question.
Opposites can.
I think so. I think opposites do attract and sometimes even complement each other. So I definitely agree that two people who are opposites can be together. You actually can do things together that the other person likes. You have more choices.
That's a good way of looking at
But
it.
they may not have compatible lifestyles, depending on what they're opposite on. You still have to have the same basic life values, but someone who's a total slob and someone who is a neat freak are probably not going to have a very easy home life because they'll be at each other's throats.
Doesn't mean that they can't be together, but what I say is alike is better, it's easier. Opposites, yes, we complement each other, but you need a higher level of compassion and acceptance. If you go in it trying to change your partner because you want to make them less of a slob or you want to make them less, less shy or whatever, then you're barking up the wrong tree. That's when you're going to have difficulties. So opposites together require more effort. and require more compassion and more understanding.
They say opposites attract, and opposites do attract, but attraction is not enough to make a long-term relationship work.
That's quite true. From Toronto, I was in a long-distance relationship from Sault Ste. Marie, and she was in Vancouver. We talked over the phone and MSN, Skype every day. We even had dinner dates over Skype. We knew this was serious. We flew to each other every 4 to 8 weeks. We got engaged. We planned our wedding together online and over the phone. We made this work. She moved to Ontario after we got married. That was 11 years ago, and 2 kids later. Happily married, and it was all worth it. That's a nice happy ending
story. That's a really great story. But
like
they
that.
really put in the effort. I mean, they
they
really
worked
put in
at
the
it.
effort.
They had to work at it. You know, this is what it's all about. You have to have your expectations in check too, and you have to have conversations, lots of great communication and different ways of communicating as well, which is much easier today, by the way, to be in a long distance relationship than it was 25 years ago.
Well, the technology definitely helps. I would also like to say that long distance relationships are very much akin to dating someone who whose lifestyle requires them to travel a lot for work.
Yeah, that's true too.
There are some professions that they're not going to be home 2 weeks out of every month.
Right, that's true.
Going forward.
Right.
So if you're not sure if you can handle a long distance relationship, you'd face the same challenges with somebody whose profession takes them away from home more often than not.
That's true. This texter from NewsTalk 1010 at 71010, afraid to call. Have been single for 15 years, mid-60s, athletic, gym 3 to 4 times a week, very busy lifestyle with work and senior family member to attend to, not wanting a relationship, but miss having enjoyable sex from time to time. Willing to be monogamous. Does long distance seem right for this request? Are there women even interested in such a relationship? How would I go about finding one? So this is from a gentleman I'm taking.
I think there are women interested in that kind of relationship the same way that he is interested in that kind of relationship. You can find someone who wants exactly what you're offering.
I think he's going to have a bit of a challenge, though.
Yes, finding that someone is going to be challenging.
No. He'll find people to date. The challenge is going to be he's not interested in a relationship, but he's still demanding monogamy, when all he's looking for is some companionship.
Okay.
Because the people that he's going to want to date, and look, dude, I get it. You're an older guy, you got responsibilities, but you're in a prime target area here. You'll have no problem once you put yourself out there to find potential girlfriends. Mm-hmm. But you can't demand monogamy if all you want is companionship.
That's a good point. So that's a conversation. You need to find somebody who wants the same things as you. This texter from Montreal writes, I kind of put long-distance relationships in the same category as mail-order brides, mostly for people who, for whatever reason, can't find a partner any other way. I don't think that's not fair.
I can understand the cynicism, and there is a lot of that, but bear in mind that what you're looking for might not necessarily be in your city, and if you're not ready to move, if you knew a list of places that you would potentially move to through online dating, you could actually explore those cities and see if you can find a match
if that's what you want. Like if I was in the dating world, I wouldn't put my net out to wherever, whoever, whatever city. It would have to be locally. That would work for me. But for some other people, maybe they have plans to move from Montreal to Toronto, or it's a city they've always wanted to live in.
At which point you start dating online long distance with the anticipation that you want to eventually move there.
Right.
And some people have very specific interests that locally cannot meet them. If you're in a very small town, and you have very particular interests, but the community you live in is very close-minded, then you may
that's like our caller, our gay caller, who's the gay husband, or whose husband moved here from clear across the world. We have Helena online. Hi, Helena.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I was going to say my husband and I we dated. I was in Europe and he was here in Canada, and that was we've been married for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And of course, like it wasn't as easy as it is today with all the technology, like you're saying.
Much
before.
Easier today, right?
But we made it work, and I moved here because it was easier for me to move. And like I said, 30 years later, and 2 kids and 2 grandchildren later.
A success story.
Bravo.
Another success story.
We made it work.
Good. And that's the thing, that you made it work, which means you put effort into it. It wasn't effortless.
Exactly, like anything. I mean, you have to put effort into everything. Why you don't take it for granted that once you get married, that's it, you know?
Exactly.
So you have to work on it every day.
Yeah. Helena, thanks so much for calling. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
story. Take care. 514-800 to text in from Montreal or 71010 from Toronto. It is Dating Dilemmas tonight. We have Fritz-Gerald of EliteSpeedDating.com. If you're interested in joining speed dating, he has offices in Montreal and Toronto and does events in both of those places, so you can sign up online. And FrankTalks.com. We have Frank Kermit in studio with us. This texter wants to know, why am I the bad guy for expecting my partner to not be friends with his ex? It's disrespectful and seems like common sense. There are millions of people out there to befriend. The issue of staying friends with your ex when it bothers your new partner. That's a very good question.
Yeah, first of all, it depends on some of the context. And generally speaking, I would agree with him.
Okay.
Very much so. If you're planning to get serious with somebody, you do have the right to say, look, I don't want you hanging out with certain people if those people are a potential threat to your relationship. Your partner may have no interest in that other guy,
That's right.
But what if that guy is continuing to pursue her? Her continuing to be friends with him, I think, is an act of disrespect for the relationship that they're in. And if the situation were reversed, if some ex-girlfriend of his was pursuing him, would she
But maybe,
be just
what if
as
there's
comfortable?
no pursuit? What if they're just friends?
I disagree completely.
Of course
I
you
Go,
completely
Fritz.
disagree.
I love having the two different opposing views
I
here.
completely disagree. You are friends with the people you are friends, and there might be some friends that I don't like, and I'm not going to make. I would not impose that view on my partner because of, and I'm going to put it in quotations, some form of insecurity that I'm feeling. It is my issue for me to deal with how she treats that person or he treats that person.
Okay.
And trust. Big word here is trust.
Yeah, that's true.
It all comes down to it. If they want to cheat or go out, they will find a way. You pushing the issue will not help your cause.
Okay, I have a question for you, Fritz. You have a partner, right? You have a life
Yes.
partner? Okay. If there was a friend of your life partner or an ex of your life partner that was going to want to break them up, would you still be okay with it?
We'll answer that in just a second. Fritz and Frank here on Dating Dilemmas, on Passion, on CJAD 800 in Montreal, NewsTalk 1010 in Toronto.
This is Passion with Dr. Laurie.
Tonight on the program, Dating Dilemmas. Once a month, we focus on dating issues with my panelists. We have Frank Kermit of FrankTalks.com and Fritz-Gerald of EliteSpeedDating.com. This text writes, Frank and Fritz kind of has a daytime talk show ring to it. And they're both in the dating world. Interesting. We've been talking about long-distance relationships. We have just been talking about, from a texter who talked about the friend of an ex or maintaining a friendship with an ex. We clearly have two opposing views here. Frank, you think the person should let go of that friend, that ex, as a friend. Fritz is saying, I'm okay with it. I'm comfortable with that. That's my issue. So I think Frank asked you a question about if that friend was trying to break you up or wasn't happy with you or whatever it is. Would you tell your wife, listen, I really don't want you hanging around with this person, like that person wants to break us up or what have you? Would you do anything about it?
I wouldn't. My first answer is I would never tell her what to do. We would have a conversation about it. She would know what my stance is, and my stance would never be to tell her she cannot be friends with that person.
But you would communicate your displeasure.
About the person trying to break us up?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
Of that, I think like any
I think
normal
we'd
human being,
all be like, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? Maybe you want to rethink that friendship, but you wouldn't
Right.
necessarily tell your partner what to do. But we're all allowed in a relationship to express our displeasure or our insecurities and all of that, which I think should also be taken into consideration.
Exactly.
And what if it's not taken into consideration? Don't you think that the guy here who's asking, like, because, dude, if you're not happy with that situation, you always have the option to walk.
Well, see, if it's not taken into consideration, I again come back to this is something between her and I, him and him, or her and her.
Mm-hmm.
It's between the couple. They have to work their thing out. Trust is between those two people, and they're in the relationship together. If they're letting some exterior aspect influence their own relationship, that's basis for a conversation.
Well, or maybe there's a different issue. Back to long distance. A lot of my friends have long distance relationships based solely on their acute needs for fetish fulfillments.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning earlier.
Okay.
If you have something that you cannot get satisfied in your local small community or in the city that you're in for whatever reason, a long-distance relationship might be the answer.
Okay. This texter writes, long-distance relationships are like escort services. You get together when you can and never really know what the other person is up to in between. They may be always at their best when you do meet up, but it's not real life. And in the real world, you don't get to see them at their less than best to see if you still belong together. I happen to agree with that. That is very hard to see somebody not in their everyday element. And every time you see each other, let's say for 2 days out of the month or every second week, it's a mini honeymoon every time. You're not seeing somebody in their element.
But that applies to people who have relationships that live in the same city. That's just not necessarily something for long distance.
Well, no, but people who generally see each other on a regular basis, you would get to see them in their element. You see them interacting with friends. You see them in different...
Not if you're only seeing each other once or twice a month. At that point, you're...
Well, that's not a... I don't find that much of a relationship if you're seeing each other once or twice a month and you're living in the same city.
I guess that depends on people's personal boundaries as to how much...
I guess. This writer writes, I'm in a long-distance relationship for the past 6 years. He lives in Leeds, England, and I live in Montreal. We both travel a lot for our jobs, and we meet in a different city on weekends, usually during stopovers. It's the most romantic relationship I've ever had. We both have busy lives and never thought of moving in together. The relationship is fantastic, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. So obviously, in this situation,
it's perfect.
It's perfect for them.
And it
works.
fuels the romance. So there's a high need for romance there, but I wonder if they would lose that romance if they happen to be living in the same city, and if the relationship or the dating that they're doing is based primarily on the need for romance, maybe living in the same city might kill it. Maybe.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
Maybe,
Go ahead,
and
Fritz.
maybe also at the stage of their lives that they're in. Like, I don't know how old these people are. If they're in their mid-20s or early 30s, that could be great. But at one point, if one of the other two wants to build more, someone is going to have to now decide who's leaving what, who's going to stay, who's going to...
It may not last forever is what we're saying. This texter at 514-800 writes, I am in what feels like long-distance relationship, but he lives 15 minutes away. He will see me only once a week. No dates with friends or family. When I try to break off, he does not accept and then calls or shows up at the door to plead. Not very fulfilling. Any suggestions on how to move on and make him understand this is just not enough? He has been divorced 2 years. Yeah, just leave.
Why are you taking him back?
Right. If this isn't satisfactory for you, if you want more and he's only capable of giving you this, and this is what he says, this is all I'm capable of giving you, then why continue with this relationship?
Madam, it's the onus is on you to leave. Every time you break up and he comes to the door, that's where you need to say, no, unless you're willing to give me what I want, this cannot continue. When you take him back and things don't change, the onus is on you to say, I've had enough and move on. And the same thing applies to the guy that wanted his girlfriend to break up the friendship with her ex. If somebody is not giving you what you need, the onus is on you to move on, not to change the person you're dating.
Right. And you can make your choices rather than give up complete control over that.
Yep.
So another issue that I'm not sure we'll get a chance to do this tonight, but certainly I think we'll save it for next time, and that is age gap relationships, like big age gap relationships. I know you've done your little survey on Facebook as well to have a look at that, but there's a lot to say with that, isn't there?
I've also done a 3-hour lecture on older men, younger women, and the surveys were about older women and younger men and the challenges that they all face.
So lots and lots to do. Okay, that's it, guys. We've kind of run out of time here, but you guys were great. Thank you very much for all of your insight into the dating world. And if people want to get in touch with you, I know, Frank, you do things on Skype, and Fritz, you do things in Montreal and Toronto.
Yep. I take coaching clients from Montreal, Toronto, around the world. That's the beauty of Skype, and I'm always available.
And that is at?
FrankTalks.com.
Right, and you deal with?
Adult male virgins and everything from adult male virgins.
You'd think there wouldn't be so many, but there are, aren't they?
There's a lot of adult female virgins out there, too, who are struggling to get into the world of dating.
Right. And just so you know, Frank wrote some books on adult male virgins as well. Did you write one on adult female virgins?
Not yet. It's in the works.
Okay, good. And Fritz, just tell us a little bit about elite speed dating in terms of how it works for people.
Well, how it works, you go on elitespeeddating.com, you find an event that is with your age group. We most generally have age group appropriates, but we also now will feature more tailored specific events for solely Anglophone. Montreal, we have a dual language, so we have Francophone events as well, events for professionals, religion-based events, and you will meet face-to-face for 5 to 7 minutes, have a great conversation, enjoy the night, maybe a few drinks. If you do drink, if you don't, there will be Perrier flowing as well.
And then in Toronto, you're starting some events in January, I believe, right?
Yes,
in so people have to sign up, obviously.
Exactly. In Toronto, we will be actually doing some more elite events. So if you're looking for something really tailored as well as being professionals, we are there for you. Just look us up on the website.
EliteSpeedDating.com. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. I want to thank our technical producers. We have Dave Simon in Montreal and Mike in Toronto. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito. I want you to stay in touch through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dr. Laurie Betito. That's Betito. I will speak with you again tomorrow night. Stay tuned for the comedy show with your host, Joey Elias. Have a great rest of the evening, and please remember to fill your life with passion.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the Adult Male Virgin Seminars and Telephone Consultations. If you are an adult and want to get a handle on this once and for all, you need this seminar. Being an adult male virgin can be most stigmatizing in today's society. You feel like a failure in the eyes of the mass culture around you, alienated from your male friends who all talk about their sexual conquest, and you must hide this shameful secret lest they use it against you. And the very personal pain, anguish, and despair that cannot be described by words that haunts you every moment of your life. Enough is enough. It is time for male virgins to take charge of their sex lives. Frank gives you the rules of winning in this seminar. The Adult Male Virgin Seminars and Telephone Consultations. Make your first time the best time of her life. Only available at FrankTalks.com. Frank helps adult boys turn into men.
What do you do when you feel like a fool? When your heart has been broken again? Pick up the phone or get onto Skype and talk on a private session. Yeah, get a little help from Frank Talks. Whoa, whoa, get by with a little help from Frank Talks. You gotta try a little help from Frank Talks. What do you do when your love goes away? Try coaching one-on-one. How do I sign up to turn things around? Just sign up at FrankTalks.com. Yeah, get by with help from Frank Talks. I get by with little help from Frank Talks. Time to try a little help from Frank Talks.
If you need help with your relationships, my buddy Frank, he's got some tips. Just go to FrankTalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's. He knows what you're going through, 'cause Frank has been there too. So log on to FrankTalks.com. FrankTalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating and relationships? Visit FrankTalks.com.